So if the recording screen or window showed up on everybody's screen, I heard that sometimes it doesn't disappear. You may have to click OK or continue to get that window to move away from your screen. It's a new feature, it seems.
Oh, Jackie says, I'm finding the volume of the presentation to be very low. I have my volume at full. Okay, Tracy is.
Perfect.
Okay, so I'm wondering, should I, since it's 1:30, should I kick things off or should I wait a minute or two?
Go for it, Olivia.
Okay, just turn off the chat. Okay, great. Okay, here we go. So welcome everybody. Welcome everyone to our second virtual showcase session. Some of you may have attended the first session that we had last month in June. It's a showcase initiative that AlphaPlus is spearheading, and really happy to collaborate with others in the LBS sector so that we can highlight some of the work that's being done and learn from each other. So this second session will focus on online tools. So the title, Online Tools to the Rescue, engaging learners to collaborate more, to collaborate together remotely. So that is the little blurb about our intro. And just to present us quickly at AlphaPlus. So we are really, really thrilled to have everyone with us today. My name is Alethea. I'll be moderating this event, at least for the first half, and then also joined by my colleague. So Monica is facilitating the Q&A later today, and she's taking care of quite a bit of back-end stuff. And then Tracy is going to be moderating the chat. And then we also want to just mention there are other members of our team at AlphaPlus. Some of them are sitting in as well, and they may not be presenting with us, but they're definitely, an integral part of our team. So we have Alan, who's our executive director, then Christine, as well as Guylaine. So that's for us. And then just before we dive into, I guess, the session, we just want to begin by acknowledging the Indigenous peoples of all the lands that we are on today. So we are meeting on a virtual platform, but we just want to take a moment to acknowledge the importance of the lands, which we call home. And so we do this to reaffirm our commitment and responsibility in improving relationships between nations and to improving our own understanding of local Indigenous peoples and their cultures. So from coast to coast to coast, we acknowledge the ancestral and unceded territory of all the Inuit, Métis, and First Nations people that call this land home. And then, yeah, so just, I guess, continuing on the housekeeping parts, I want to also introduce Gloria and Peggy, who are our ASL interpreters, since we have some in the audience who are also benefiting from this. And so please do, if you're not presenting, if possible, keep your microphone muted. We are quite a large group. If you have issues with bandwidth, you can turn your video off or consider turning it off. Then definitely feel free to use the chat to post any questions or comments. And then as well, if you're familiar with the Zoom toolbar, you can definitely make use of emojis to give us visual feedback. Also, final note, the session is being recorded. So that's kind of it for the housekeeping. Then in terms of our guest organizations that we have joining us today, we're really fortunate to have these guests joining us today to share with us their experiences from the field. So we're very, very thrilled to have Fleming with us, Fleming College and Lambton Kent District School Board and the Learning Place. So from Fleming College, I just want to give a very warm welcome to Sarah and to Michael. And I've just we have their respective responsibilities at Fleming College. And then we're also joined by Christine from Lambton Kent District School Board. So very, very thrilled to have Christine with us as well. And then finally, from the learning place, we have Sandy, as well as Alicia. Manal sends her regrets. She was not able to make this time, but she was a very integral part of prepping Sandy and Alicia for the session. So very, very glad to have them join us today. So those are the three organizations we have with us. Really looking forward to hearing from everyone. And then in terms of our agenda, it will be structured as follows. So the first hour and a half will be a discussion, so kind of like roundtable discussion with our guest presenters. Then we'll be followed by a very quick breakout room activity. We'll take a break at 3. And then from 3:15 to 4, we'll have that tech Q&A, which I really highly recommend that you stick around for, because Monica has always some really great tips to share and really awesome tools to go over. So it's very, very interesting. So are there any, I'm just going to quickly check the chat to make sure if there's anything. Okay, great. So with that said, I think I'll just get started with the first question, if that's okay. I have pre-selected also the order in which programs will go. So I'll just let you know when it's your turn to speak. So the first question that we kind of want to facilitate a discussion around is about the approach. So what's your approach, for each of these programs to creating the kind of remote learning environment where learners are actually motivated to engage with the content and collaborate with one another? So, feel free to talk about the tools and activities that help you make your class or your classes more interactive. So that's the first question. I'll leave that up there. And the first program that I will call on to share with us is Lambton Kent. And the program after that, just so you're prepared, is Fleming. So.
That's Christine.
Hi, I can't see myself on the board, so I have no idea if you guys can see me as well. Hopefully you can. My name is Christine Hudke. I'm with the Lambton Kent District School Board here in Sarnia, Ontario. My job is to help with learners as they work towards their Ontario secondary diploma, as well as working with them to obtain their, excuse me, I just lost my thought there. As they obtain their goals towards working in the workplace, as well as just kind of getting information for themselves to better their learning as well. So in answer to this question, our approach to creating a motivational learning environment was to make things as interactive and user-friendly as possible. A lot of our learners don't know how to use a computer or a laptop or some sort of smartphone device. So it was our goal to make it so that they could, so that it was easy for them to still engage with us and still engage with others. So a lot of our learners loved using the booklets that we have in the classroom, and they love the classroom environment. So our goal was to make our online modules as much like learning in a classroom as possible. We tried to make it interactive, as if we as the teacher were sitting in the classroom, and they were there and they're able to interact with us as well. So that was one of our main goals as our approach to the online learning. Not everybody likes online learning. Not everybody can do online learning. So we wanted to make it so that they would feel comfortable that way. So we created what is called Brightspace modules for English, math, managed learning, and communications. So these modules were created by our instructors here in the classroom. I was the one that created the actual math module, and I based it off of the booklets that we have here in the classroom. What I did was we made sure we had tasks to complete, quizzes throughout each lesson and unit, and we added videos and worksheets to make the learning smoother and more understandable. So with those quizzes, we wanted to make sure that each student, after they got through a section of math, was understanding what they were doing with math. That quiz was then graded by an instructor. So the instructor is still communicating with the students throughout the whole process. We didn't want the students to go into those modules and just stop and do whatever they needed to do. And then we come in the end and say, yep, you did your thing. We wanted to make sure that at each step of the way, there was an instructor there. There was an instructor helping them, giving them answers to their questions, and assuring them that they were doing what they were supposed to do. So those videos and worksheets really help to solidify what concept you're going through. And then the worksheets help to go through that concept that they're now working on. So we encourage students to ask questions at any point in their learning. We offered Zoom sessions to help the students do their math work, phone calls, video chats to help with more understanding of the materials. So what I did as a math teacher, I love math, and I really want to show to my students that I am in love with math and that I can make them love math as well. So one of my students, I remember him coming in and he said, I just hate math. I have never needed to use math and I don't see any reason for it. So what's the point of me going through and taking math? And he was an older adult. He had already been through the army. He had already been through a job. And now he was coming to Canada from Australia and he needed his high school diploma to get a job. And I said, well, my goal for you is by the end of this, you will love math just as much as I do. And sure enough, he came back to me after writing his final test and said, I actually enjoy math. I enjoy learning new things and using this and seeing how I can use this in my everyday life. So that was so encouraging to me, because my goal is not for you to learn it and then forget it. My goal is for you to learn it and see how you use it throughout your entire life. And you do. Math is something that you will use throughout your entire life. So we have some wonderful instructors here in the classroom who, like me, love to impress on their students their knowledge and their understanding. So that's what they did with each of their modules. They put their heads together and they came up with some creative ideas and ways of helping the students through the pandemic. We definitely had to be creative with learning. Obviously, it's not easy for everybody to do it online. Personally, I'm very old school. I like to have a book in front of me and I like to lecture my students and I like to make them understand it and see the brightness that comes with them learning when they're going through those. And it's really hard for me to do online sessions not being able to see my students. So I definitely had a hard time with that transition as well, which I feel made it a little more understandable for me to put that across to my students. I understand what you're going through. I understand how you're having a difficult time with this. I had a difficult time with this. This is what I did. And a lot of my students will now come to me and say, hey, can we do an online session with math? So Zoom is great for doing online sessions with math. They have a whiteboard that you can share your screen. You can see your student, you can see the whiteboard, and you can do the problems right there directly with them. And I love that because I want to see my student, I want to see what they're doing, and I want them to see what I'm doing. So online tools are amazing. There are a lot of things out there that you can use and you can do and work with. You just got to be creative in your ways. Make it so that that student is as comfortable as possible with sharing any information with you and with you sharing any information with them. So each week, I have the responsibility of checking on my students. As I go through the math modules, or any module that they're working on, I then check in with them every week. They have a set schedule. They need to check in their Brightspace account twice a week. And then I come after them and say, nope, you haven't been on. You need to get on there. Is there anything I can do to help this transition make more sense to you? Any challenges that you are facing that are keeping you from your schoolwork? So we do our best to work with each student's challenges to figure out the best ways to serve them. It certainly is a challenge keeping up with the students since they have to keep track of their kids, they have to keep track of work, they have many complications and challenges in their lives. And so we want to do our best to make this not another challenge that they have to work with, but something that they understand and something that they will enjoy and have fun coming to. So it's great to see them working through their challenges and still getting their homework done. It's wonderful when students open up to you about their challenges and you are able to support them. I've had a couple of students throughout this pandemic. I think I'm the only one that they have as a support system, or us as instructors are the only ones that they have as a support system. So it's really a big impact that we have on our students, not only with the learning, but also just being there for them, just knowing and letting them know that there is someone out there that cares for them, that cares for what they're going through. And even if they're not getting the schoolwork done, that's completely fine. They can get it done when they have the time and when they have that mental capacity to do it. So again, we've worked through Brightspace. That was our big thing that we did with our modules. And we made those as interactive as possible by using our quizzes. There's lots of different interactive things on Brightspace that you can use. There's surveys you can get the students to do, just that allows them to get into their learning a little better and more than just lecturing them. So that's all I have for today.
That's great. Thank you so much, Christine, for sharing that.
You're welcome.
I don't know if you could probably not see me yet. I think I'm not yet spotlighted, but I just wanted to thank you for sharing that, especially giving these stories about how you're supporting the learner, not just to learn the subject matter, but even humanly their considerations and what they're going through. I feel like that's definitely an important aspect to take into consideration, especially I feel like this whole pandemic has accelerated or at least opened our eyes to all of some of these components that were always there, but I guess maybe have become more prevalent in these times. So thank you for sharing that. I was just looking at thank you. Yeah, I was looking at the chat as well, and it seems like you had, there were a couple of people who were interested or curious in, and if you had any resources to share. I guess you might not have them on hand, but maybe in a follow-up or something, if you did have any resources that you were sharing with like working with math resources or your learners, maybe that would be something you could send to Monica or to myself or to Tracy, or anyways the group, then we could just pass that along to the participants, since it seems like there's quite a bit of interest in resources and sharing around that. So I just wanted to put that there.
I definitely have a lot of math resources, so I will definitely share that with you guys.
Okay.
There's a lot of great math videos out there that simply explain every math concept and do problems with it. One big one I will say right now is called Khan Academy, KHAN Academy. They go through every concept from kindergarten to college level, so prepping for SATs. And they have videos that go with every concept, and then worksheets and practice problems, tests, quizzes, that type of thing. So it's very good. It's free. If you want to pay for it, you can get more of it. But the free version gives you basically everything you want to know. And they're always updating it with more.
Okay, perfect. That's good to know. Thank you for sharing that. And I see that Tracy has shared that link in the chat too, so people can benefit from what you were just mentioning. And then I guess like just final note before we move to Fleming, I was just thinking, as you were talking about Brightspace, I was thinking, oh, maybe we need to have you back for, we're doing a later session about learning management systems. I think it'll be our third or fourth, I think maybe our fourth one. So anyways, it'd be interesting to continue the conversation about how you use the learning management system, because you were mentioning different activities that you use, like the surveys and the quizzes. And anyways, we can connect like later, but it was interesting that you got to share that. And I think some might be interested in that too.
Sure.
Yeah. And I'll just let you, I think there are a few questions in the chat that maybe, I think they might be directed to you, but I just need to kind of move past the baton to Fleming. So I wonder if those questions are something you can just maybe like read and take knowledge of, and then maybe if we have time at the end, we can address them, or we can always address them in a follow-up email for the participants, since it looks like there's some interest in in some of your experience around what you just shared. So
For sure. Thank you.
Thanks so much again, Christine, for that. Okay, so we'll move to Fleming College. We have Sarah and Michael with us, and I'll let them take it away.
Awesome. Thank you for having us today. I'm just going to start by sharing my screen here. Just take a moment.
While Sarah's sharing her screen, I'd just like to thank Christine for sharing with us today. Definitely reinforces some of the work that we've been doing. Sarah can speak more about how much she likes math. I have certainly I have a lot more respect for math and those who like math over the last few years as a volunteer tutor who often finds themselves teaching math very unexpectedly. So I do appreciate that. And also the fact that you already introduced Brightspace D2L to the group, because I think Sarah's going to touch on that as well.
Yeah. Awesome. Yeah, and I'm also going to touch on, I noticed there was a question in the chat just about interactive math activities. So I will give an option as well for that. Yeah, let's get started here. So again, thank you for having us. It's a pleasure to come in and chat with everyone today. Again, my name is Sarah Sherwin, and I work as an academic upgrading faculty member at Fleming College. I teach math and communications, and more recently, I've also developed some digital learning materials as well for students, because obviously there's a need for that. But being at Fleming, it's put us in a position, we're quite fortunate that we were able to use a lot of technology provided by the college. So I know a lot of people are familiar with Zoom, but we actually use WebEx to interact with our students. So we do offer kind of a one-to-one support with our students, which has never happened before. So it's almost like private tutoring in the comfort of their own home. We always give the option, depending on their internet access. We always say you can leave their, their camera off. And as well, depending on their comfort level, because not everyone, thinking back to last year, not everyone wants to share kind of what's inside their home, right? So, but again, I noticed a lot of students, once they were in WebEx and chatting one-to-one, their comfort level definitely increased and they tended to reach out more. Yeah, and then as Michael was saying, we have utilized D2L or Brightspace. We have just developed an AU kind of centralized program page for students. So they're able to go through their orientation when they're starting in the program. We also embedded just a milestone activity for them to complete as well. So again, digital literacy skills are all embedded right into that program page. They're also able to communicate with other learners. There were discussion boards where they're able to either post questions or respond to other questions. So again, just creating that sense of community, because as we all know, they're no longer in the classroom anymore. So for them, they're just working at home. So I think it's really important for them to realize that they're not the only one working towards their, these goals. So I think it kind of increased motivation as well to see that others are working towards similar goals. And whether that be, entering post-secondary or just doing more job training, we have a variety of, pathways that our learners may go through. And as well on the D2L, we would also post, new or current class schedules. So students were aware of when classes were going on. And when they could reach faculty. We obviously used email was a big part of one of our strategies before we utilized D2L. And we would use that either for a quick check-in. We've also set up just subject emails for English, math, science, and computers. So that's kind of the main point of contact for students. They could submit assignments, ask questions. We would also set up any testing through email as well. And I just want to give a shout out to some of our student advisors as well, because they've actually developed kind of a monthly kind of a pat on the back for attendance for our learners. And again, I think that goes a long way to show them that recognition that despite the pandemic and however busy they may be, they're still making strides in their education. So I think that's a really helpful tool that we used as well. We also relied a little bit on older communications, such as phone, because as we know, the pandemic first started and it was kind of a rush to, reach out to learners. So it started with, just an access to technology survey. Do they have a computer at home? Do they have a phone? And just seeing what they need. And again, at Fleming, we were in the position to provide laptops to learners as a loan. And I think that just increases equity and participation as well for our learners. As well, there may be a lot of negatives of the pandemic, but I think we always want to look on the bright side, right? So I think it revolutionized how learning happens and is going to continue happening. So I'm going to just exit out of this for just a moment. I'm going to stop sharing. I want to share with you just my whiteboard. Oh, sorry, I shared the wrong screen there. I'm just going to go back in. There we go. I already had one open and I opened a new one. So as Christine mentioned, Microsoft Whiteboard is a great tool to actually walk through any math problems in real time. You've noticed I've kind of pre-written one down, but if I had a learner in a room with me, I would go through, say if they had trouble with a certain question, I would walk them through it and just make sure that, everything was making sense. And another cool thing about Microsoft Whiteboard is you can format the background. So depending on learner needs, you can definitely change it up. Christine mentioned the Khan Academy source, and I know they'll use a black background with kind of colorful text, and it just makes it really stand out. But again, it just depends on personal preference. But and not only for math, but for English as well. I also, you can copy and paste text onto the whiteboard and kind of mark up any editing symbols for the students and just walk them through, how to solve any problems, right? So I'm just gonna stop sharing that. And I did mention an interactive math program. So it's known as desmos.com. I'm just going to type it in the chat there. Primarily, I knew Desmos as mainly a graphing, an interactive graphing calculator, and either for linear functions or quadratic functions, you would plug in whatever equation and it shows you visually what that graph looks like. Students could use that to check an answer, or if they're really struggling with a problem, they can see what that looks like. Another cool thing about Desmos is they do offer virtual lesson plans and activities to either, supplement curriculum, or maybe, students just need a little more help on something. So it's a really, easy way to kind of pull different content from there as well. And it's a variety, it's not just graphing. They have linear equations I mentioned, but there's geometry activities, probability, lots of interesting stuff in a variety of grade levels. So it's always good to check out. A couple of other things that we've used as well are Mentimeter and Kahoot, which are interactive, virtual, I guess, collaboration activities, if you want to think of it that way. I've actually also...
The interpreters are going to interrupt for just a moment. What's the name of the first resource you gave? Mentimeter?
Mentimeter, yes. I'll type that in.
That'd be great. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thank you. Yeah, so I've actually recently used Mentimeter for in-person learning. So it's not only just virtual learning that it's going to be beneficial for, but in person as well, as we kind of have to physically distance. So I would use it for, if you had a group of students just starting and you wanted to kind of do a quick pre-assessment to see where they're at, you can just ask them a couple of questions. They key in their responses, and there's a little code that they enter, and then all the responses kind of show up. You could choose a word cloud, and there's lots of different functions. So it's I really recommend it. It's really interesting, and we always have really great feedback. Kahoot, I sometimes use, if I'm doing a review quiz with learners, I'll use it for that. But yeah, I like both of them as well. I've recently found Mentimeter since a couple of our full-time faculty shared it with us, and I really recommend it. Yeah, I think that's about it for that question. I'll touch on some of the challenges and takeaways in the other two questions, but yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Sarah, for sharing that. And yeah. Thank you. Sorry, Michael, did you want to add on something to follow up on Sarah?
Just to riff on what Sarah was saying at the end there about bringing the technology and the tools into in-person, because we do have some transition back to in-person opportunities now, is that in some ways we have revolutionized our way of teaching and learning and engaging with students. In a way, we're never going to go back to the way it was. We've moved to a new place, introducing new tools and concepts for engaging students, which is, one of the really big positives that have come out of the difficulties of the last 16 to 18 months.
Yeah. Thanks for that, Michael. I feel like it's also, from what I'm gathering, there was like the before and the after, but the idea of going, actually, there's no real going back. It's like there will be this kind of third form of teaching and learning. And so it's, very interesting to know about how, I guess, that journey was for you all at Fleming College. And then also, I guess, in that transition and in that exploration, the kinds of tools that really helped you and supported you in that. So for example, Mentimeter, exploring that, I guess, virtually, but then realizing, oh, actually, this can be used also in person. So then kind of having that, I guess, hybrid or versatile use of these different tools and activities. That's really interesting to see. And yeah, I think Tracy has shared, she compiled all the resources that were mentioned in the chat. So that's really great. So thank you for sharing those. And I think I did have a question actually that came up for when you were sharing, Sarah, the Microsoft Whiteboard math activity. Also, by the way, I feel like there's a math theme going on here.
I love math too.
That's great. Yeah, that's awesome. But I noticed your handwriting was particularly neat. And the question that was, I guess, thrown out there was, what kind of tool, like, do you use a specific tool for that?
Yeah, so I'm fortunate to have Fleming resources available to me. So I use a Surface Pro, and I do have a Surface Pro pen, which does help me write neatly. It could be practice too, I don't know. The other option, you can use your mouse cursor, or if you have a touch screen, you could use your finger, which I know is not the greatest, but it'll work in a pinch, I suppose.
Okay, that's good to know. Yeah, so it does require kind of like an external pencil to to be able to write like that. That's good to know. Okay, perfect. Thank you. I'm gonna move to our third group. So that's the learning group. I just want to put a quick pulse check out there that we're going to wrap up the last two questions before 3, actually ideally before 2:45. So usually the first question takes kind of like the most time because there's more, I guess, meat to it. And the second two are more staccato. Sorry, I don't know how to translate that for the ASL interpreters, but yeah, so we'll move along here. But I'll give the floor to, I'll just actually share my screen so that the question can be up there again. Sorry, it should be this first one. So yeah, I want to give the floor to the learning place, Sandy and Allison. Take it away.
All right.
Sandy, you're on mute. Sorry, guys. I followed the instructions, but then didn't take it off.
Sorry.
I just want to say thank you for having us, and we're thrilled to be able to present and kind of contribute to the space. Unfortunately, one of our instructors, the key person who really I wanted to sort of showcase and who really drives a lot of our technology, wasn't able to be here today, but myself and Alicia, we've got 2 Alicias. One is a learner with, we've invited, and Alicia Topper, she's one of our instructors. So let me cover a little bit of some context around what we're going to talk about in terms of answering this particular question. For many of you who may not know us, we're a language and basic skills agency, literacy agency in the Peel region. And our specific agency tends to have quite lower level skilled, what we like to call learners. And our learners really have a lot of different challenges that perhaps some of the folks that presented earlier perhaps don't have to deal with. So we, have to get super basic and really drill down some of the technological gaps so that we can rebuild them within our lower level learners. So just keep that in mind as we kind of walk through the presentation. I'm going to share my screen and I want to review. I'm going to stop sharing this screen. I'll disconnect it, Alethea. And so let me present what we're going to share. Can everybody see this?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So I'll walk you through some of the 4 main steps that both Alicia and myself was sort of tag team. And this was really something that, because of COVID and the prevalence and takeoff of remote learning, we were forced to view our demographic very, very differently. And we basically had to sort of re-implement a way to connect with our learners because everything moved remote. And our learners, like I had mentioned, are quite low level. They're low level just in their basic literacy, but even more so as it comes to digital literacy. So we had a bit of a challenge. We kind of had to take a step back and develop a bit of a process to pull up those skill sets so that we could finally get to stage 4, which is getting to the collaboration part. So I'll very quickly go through this, which is we've developed a broad process, which was working on introducing the concept of remote learning to a lot of our learners who, because of their low digital literacy skills, as well as not having access to technology, was a very intimidating process. And many of them, as COVID lockdowns were implemented, really were, they were disrupted in their learning journey. And so we really had to sort of figure out, well, how do we introduce this concept and make this concept comfortable so that our learners could pick up where they left off pre-COVID and gain the momentum that they had established when we had in-person learning. So we went through a process of introducing remote learning, and I'll drill down these very quickly in subsequent slides. Our next step was to really get a better understanding of when we introduced the concept of remote learning, we had to have a way to sort of evaluate where exactly their skill sets were, because we needed to make sure, do they understand Zoom? Can they even open an email? Do they know what an invite is? And once we had a better handle on that, we were then able to develop some basic processes that would pull up their skill sets and continue on with their journey. Part of our stage 3 was to be able to implement, once we understood where the skill sets were, to implement some of the more low-hanging fruit, is what we kind of term it internally, on how do we pull up some of the basic skill sets that some of the folks need to have as it relates to technology. So we developed some strategies on how to reach out and how to do some basic stuff that, you know, might help them feel more comfortable in this style of learning. And then finally, once we kind of got them up to that level, that was really when we were able to leverage some of the collaborative tools and digital tools that really would have made their learning fun. And they were, you know, comfortable, and they would embrace that particular type of format, which is, you know, quite intimidating to those folks who don't have lower levels of literacy. But, you know, now they've got to work with it. So as we introduced remote learning, there was definitely a retraction of engagement that we saw, because a lot of folks who came in person didn't have the skill sets like I had mentioned. And so we really wanted to sort of do a bit of a marketing approach on, you know, encouraging them to continue on with their learning remotely. And so here are some 4 key elements that we really marketed towards to sort of help them feel more comfortable. And of course, a large part of it was, we're all stuck at home. We're all sharing the workspace that we're not typically used to sharing at home with our spouses and partners and children, and a lot of stuff is happening. But we really sold it as in, you can continue your learning because remote learning is flexible. And we had some subsequent instructor engagement to make sure that that flexibility truly was there, by setting up Zoom sessions, by being able to have one-on-one sessions similar to what they might have in the classroom prior to COVID, and also just, you know, maintaining that rapport that the instructors had built with the learners. Credibility, I mean, it really just was that it is a legit form of learning. Many people, at least our demographic, wasn't bought on the idea, and they didn't quite understand or appreciate how remote learning really is also a credible form of learning. And so we really, you know, tried to introduce that to them. Of course, some of the challenges that we faced as well, which we had to kind of overcome, was that not everybody has got access to a laptop or got access to technology. And there's always issues with different technical components that obviously need to have a stable internet connection or connectivity. And so we really had to work with our learners to be able to overcome that and not make that an intimidating piece that stopped their learning journey, given sort of some of their basic skill sets. And then also, one of the ways in which a lot of our learners, lower level learners, really embrace learning is that when they were here in person, they really got to interact and work with the instructors and other learners. And even though everybody in the classroom was at different levels, we do a lot of custom, you know, type of tutoring. They still had that social interaction, which at least helped them feel like they weren't alone in that learning style. And so we really tried to address that by saying we can have group classes, which we have online. And, you know, we said this is, you know, just a different way to deliver. So introducing and getting that concept of remote learning was critical for us to at least have them be open. Once we kind of got that under our belt, we really wanted to evaluate and see where are the actual skill sets that when we were in person, we didn't have to worry about, because we didn't communicate that way. We didn't deliver that way. And at max, we might have sent, you know, a learner an assignment via email. But in this particular situation, in order to have a successful remote learning experience, we had to figure out, well, where is everybody? And how do we make sure that we have some standards in place so that, you know, we can actually connect? And so we implemented a way to evaluate where these particular skill sets were. So we implemented an initial assessment for digital skills, and we asked these types of questions. Have you ever used an LMS or Zoom before? LMS, for those who may not know, is learning management platform or learning management system. Do you have a computer? Which device are you most comfortable using? Do you have an email? Do you have a printer, scanner? And these sort of types of basic communication techniques was a way for us to baseline just exactly where our learner demographic was. And out of this is how we developed, you know, our training plan to get some of these lower level learners to a level where they could all function relatively the same. So we developed a training platform. And Alicia, please feel free to jump in if I've you know, missed anything or there's something significant that we want to share with this group.
Sure.
So out of this, Alicia actually did a lot of some of the training platforms along with Manal. And so we would share some of the remote learning tutorials in advance, just to get that comfort level going, videos and digital tools that we were going to be using during the training. So they had an idea of what they were walking into, not just, oh my goodness, I don't know what I'm going to learn and I'm super, you know, intimidated and I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to do this.
I'll just add, Andy, a little bit.
Yep.
So we also we made handouts, like Zoom handouts with each feature listed and how to use. Even like mute, unmute, turn your video on or off. So everything is listed on that handout, which we provide before our lessons so that they're prepared how to use different features. And as Sandy said, they don't feel intimidated by using technology or a different software. Just want to add that, Sandy. Go ahead.
Yeah, absolutely. And what we did find was that because a lot of our learners had somewhat of a comfort level using their phone as a device, as a primary communication device, we really were mindful that perhaps we've got to sort of tailor our lesson plans, tailor the individual assignments so that they could potentially continue their learning on a device that they feel comfortable and then eventually sort of graduate to a laptop or, you know, another tablet or another form, another device that, you know, is more conducive to actually doing assignments. And so that was a bit of a painful process, to be honest, to be able to get that concept of you're not seeing anything different from screen to screen to screen. All it is a device that's changing, but you're able to accomplish the same goals and you're able to do the activities. You just got to open your mind on, you know, what is the technology that you're going to be able to use this particular lesson on. So once we kind of got that as a process plan and more of our learners were going through this new 4-step process, we really got to a point where we could leverage some of the collaboration tools that many of you have mentioned. Christine mentioned it, as well as Sarah mentioned it. Michael, you mentioned it as well. And so these collaboration tools really sort of opened up this light bulb moment where, oh my goodness, I love learning online. I don't want to come back in person. And I just find that I'm doing so much better. Attendance approved, progress approved, concepts that were somehow difficult in person, but, you know, when they embrace the collaboration tools and all of this little bit of a skill set that we had to kind of pull up, we really found that, you know, a lot of our learners, if they were given the choice, never want to come back in person. So we'll talk a little bit about the collaboration tools, and I'm going to hand that over to Alicia. Alicia and the tech team have done such a great job in developing some of these collaboration tools, or at least using them in an interactive way to pull those learners in. Alicia, you let me know when you want me to change the slide.
Sure. Thank you, Sandy. Before I begin, I'll just give a little bit of introduction. My name is Alicia, and I work as a digital literacy instructor with the Learning Place. Unfortunately, Manal couldn't come here because of a family emergency, so I'm substituting for her. As I think Sandy explained it really well, what our organization does, we also host a lot of digital literacy workshops where we help our learners learn different digital skills. And along with doing that, along with teaching them different softwares, be it Excel, Word, we also help our LBS learners transition to remote learning through courses like Computer Basics. And as Sandy mentioned, that some of them are more comfortable using their phones and don't have access to a laptop. Through the Computer Basic workshop or through workshops like that, they get comfortable using their phone. So first we start them with the device they're comfortable in. As long as they can come to a Zoom session, are they using a phone? It's okay. And slowly we'll transition them to a bigger screen like a laptop. And instead of me talking about the experience our LBS learners have with the basic workshop skills and how we help them transform into remote learning, we have our LBS learner here, Alicia. And I think she'll be a great person to share her experience. She has been with us and she has been attending our Computer Basic workshop in order to help her transform into more remote learning environment in her day-to-day life. So I think she'll be a better person to share her experience with you and how she felt going through the process. Alicia, go ahead.
Hello, thank you. My name is Alicia. I am one of the, I feel like I achieve so much and I am very successful at it because I catch on like real quick. Thank you guys so much. And I really appreciate it. At first, I never had a clue how to use a computer, how to use a desktop, even my own phone. I only know about answer, make a call. Now, I am very flexible on my computer, and my desktop, and my phone. I can enter any Zoom meeting. I can set up Zoom meeting. I know about my CPR. I know about my desktop, my laptop so much. I could make a file. I could put up my file. I could search my file. I could do anything that I want to do with my computer, all because of you guys. I am so happy. Now I could able to teach my kids them things that they do not know about the computer. I think it's very important for everyone to make it possible to take this chance to learn about computer, because now everything you have to do, you do it with computer. So I am like really appreciate every single moment of it. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Alicia. Really appreciate that.
Thank you.
All right, back to you, Elisa.
Hello, everyone. Sorry, my internet is giving me a little issue. It got disconnected. Can you hear me now, Sandy?
Yep.
Yes, we can hear you.
Perfect. I'm so sorry. I know Monica said we might have to move to the second question really soon. So I'm just going to quickly dive into some of the collaboration tools that we have been using as an organization and that might be helpful to other instructors as well. The first one being Zoom. So Sandy, if you can move to the next slide. Sorry. So the first one being Zoom, because Zoom is such a popular interface now with remote learning. There are a lot of tiny features on Zoom that can really help make our lessons, our sessions more interactive. One of them being a breakout room. So in a Zoom session, the host has the ability to create multiple breakout rooms. They are like creating groups. So for example, if you see that some of the learners are struggling with one concept, whereas the others are better at it, you can divide them into groups and have them work on different activities. That way they still feel like they're working in groups as they would in a real life in a classroom. And also they're grouped together as per their abilities and they can be given different tasks to perform. That's one of the tools you can use on Zoom. The other tool is using poll questions. It is such a wonderful tool. I started using it recently. You have a poll question as a host, you might need to enable it by going into your Zoom account through the Chrome. But once you enable it, you can have questions added into your poll like a pop quiz. So I usually do it in the beginning of the class or workshop and ask learners, what did we learn yesterday, right? And you can see how many learners are responding, how many responded to which question. You can add some options like MCQs. So it's a really wonderful tool to have a very quick quiz. Also, we encourage our learners to use the chat box to communicate with each other. And I think once we introduce them to that chat box, they really feel comfortable sending you messages personally. We just need to tell them that you can send one message to all of the people or one person at a time. In case they're too intimidated to ask you something in front of everyone, they can send you a chat. So that works really well in order to make them more interactive. There are really fun emojis on Zoom. I just saw someone use a heart emoji. I think it was Halithia. There's heart emojis, there's a thumbs up. So anytime I ask my learners if they grasp the concept, they want me to repeat it, they usually give me a thumbs up and I know everything's good, right? There's also a feature right under emojis saying raise hand. So I have seen some low-level learners, they're not comfortable with Zoom. They usually do physical hand. And if there are too many people in a workshop, you cannot see them raising their hand. So usually before I begin any session, I go through these features and I tell them that you can raise hand using this feature so that I know you have a question and I don't ignore you intentionally, right? So these are really some of the good tools that Zoom has, and you don't even have to go anywhere to do it. And we also give our participants ability to share their screen. So sometimes if they're not able to send me an email or they get stuck somewhere, I have them share their screen and I take control of their screen and then I help them out, show them step by step how you can go around. So that was a Zoom interface. There's another tool that's a really good tool to use for collaboration among students, giving them a project or a lesson plan. It's Google Docs. I think we might be familiar with Google Docs. There's another thing called Hyperdoc, which is basically using Google Docs to create a lesson plan. So I'll show you how to do that. Sandy, if I can share my screen, is that okay?
Yep.
I'm not able to share it. It says host disabled.
Yes, just give me 1 second because we didn't add you as a co-host.
No worries. No worries.
So just very quick reminder about the timing, just so that everybody else has a chance to wrap up as well, and we can move to the second question. So
I'll just cover this tool and I'll wrap it up.
Go ahead, Alicia. Can you share now?
Yes, I can. Thank you so much. Okay, I'm gonna go here. So this is an example of a Hyperdoc. Just gonna move your window around. So Hyperdocs are like digital lesson plans. They can be designed by instructors and they provide access to all the content in a single document, in a single organized space. So for example, this is a Hyperdoc created. Now, in order to create this document, I used the same tools. I inserted a table from here. I did some coloring from editing. I did all that. And then what I did is we went ahead and inserted links on top of each text. So I selected the text, I inserted a link, for example, to a video or whatever I would like my students and learners to view. And when I share this document with them, they can have access to different types of content in one place. So if they click on this first link, they can click here and go ahead and read an article on tips for digital citizenship or how to maintain a good digital footprint. If they click on this video one, they'll be able to see a video. So they can click here and they can go to a video and they'll be able to see a video. Similarly, there is an article on cyber threats. So if they click this, they're gonna go directly to cyber threat document, they'll be able to read it. Similarly, there's another video. So everything is combined in one single document. Also, I left some space here. They can reflect, they can take notes regarding what videos and what articles they saw and what they learned from here. You can also insert a Google form link here to have them take a quiz, right? So they can simply click on the link, take a quiz once they have learned everything and they have reviewed all the resources. They can apply, use a Google form to have that quiz. Now, the best part about this is you can share it using a Google Classroom. That way you can share a copy of this with each learner and each one has a separate one. So you don't have to share a separate link for every learner. You can simply share it through Google Classroom and the Google Classroom allows you to have a copy, separate copy for each learner. And once they're done, they can submit it back. Each learner has their entire lesson plan, all the resources in one document. And I can share more information since we're running out. I have a few links related to Hyperdocs that I can help you create and go through. So these are the few links. There are a lot of samples and templates that you can see. They're related to maths, English, a lot of samples here to go through. You can simply click here and they directly download into your drive. So you can go into your drive, you can edit it, or you can use it. I'm going to share these links with you so that you can have a look at the templates, and you can also go through the instructions to create a Hyperdoc. So that's one of a really good tool that we like to use because everything is at one place. All the resources are at one place. And I think those are the main tools we had for today. There are other tools like Google Classroom, Flipgrid. There's one tool, the Screencastify. This is really, really useful. You can record your screen and it can serve as a good tutorial video for your learners to help them transition to remote learning. So if someone doesn't know how to use Zoom, you can use Zoom on your screen. Use Screencastify to record your screen, your video, and then send that video to your learners so that it can follow step by step. Again, I'll share all the links in our chat box. I don't want to occupy too much time, so I'm going to share this link as well. It's a free Google extension for you. So once you click on that link, it will take you through the steps to download the extension. That way you have all the resources and it will take you through the steps.
Perfect. Great. Yes, please do share those links. I feel like there was so much good information that was being shared about resources. It's hard to contain.
Yes.
So yeah, but it would be definitely, I think there are a lot of people who would be interested in seeing those and following those links. So thank you so much for that.
Everything in the chat about Hyperdoc, Screencastify, and all of the resources we had. So
perfect.
For everyone to review.
Okay, perfect. I think maybe there's just a missing link for Flipgrid, but you can put that in.
Yes, I'll put that right.
Perfect. There were a couple of questions for you, but in the interest of time, like we need to kind of get things moving along here. So I think for those questions, we do have because we have been taking note. I think Tracy has been diligently noting everything. So we'll probably follow up later just to get the answers to the questions that have been asked for you guys. So then let me just share my screen. So we're going to move to the second question. Let me put in the order again for the presenters. That way y'all will know what who will share when. And for this second question, so for the second and third, because we're trying to wrap up in basically 15 minutes or less for these two questions, and there's 3 speakers for each, if possible. So this is kind of an on the fly, ask, but if you could limit your response to 2 to 3 minutes, so it would be kind of the Reader's Digest of what you'd prepared. So I'm really sorry, that's really kind of brutal to chomp down, but I probably should have moved things along quicker previously. So I'm really sorry, but we really are short on time. So if we could just follow that, would really appreciate that. So Fleming would start first, and then Landon Kent, and then the Learning Place for the second question, which is, what was your main challenge in fostering learning collaboration in a remote context? So I'll let Fleming, Sarah and Michael take it away.
Of course. We looked at this question because it isn't just one main challenge. I'm going to focus on 3 big ones quickly. So definitely there's, we noticed a digital divide for sure. Many learners, whether there's a lack of technology, a lack of internet connection, or just some of the executive functioning skills to kind of navigate online learning. I think that was probably the biggest challenge. And also they're now having, so before with in-person learning, a lot of our learners would come to class mainly, that was their main spot to focus on their studies, right? Away from any childcare responsibilities or anything like that. But the pandemic made it very difficult for them to juggle all of those, responsibilities. So they can no longer attend class to focus, and they're now having to, juggle their own studies as well as, if they have their own children dealing with online learning. So it's, we noticed a lack of engagement there. But then on the flip side, it did work well for some. And again, I guess we'll see what happens in the future. And then the last challenge, a learning curve, not only for learners, but instructors as well. Having our program self-paced, so there's many different learners working on different materials, and a lot of them were printed materials. So I think it really highlighted the need to refresh our curriculum and make it digitally friendly and engaging. So as I said before, I think it's only we're trying to look at the positives and how it's changing learning. So yeah, I think that's all I have for that.
That's great. Thank you. And really good, good exercise. So, I mean, it was very well, you condensed it all. And I feel like I really appreciate that you've almost reframed the question into from challenge to an opportunity. I feel like that's how you guys are looking at it. So I find that pretty interesting. So thank you for sharing that, Sarah. So I guess if Lambden Kent would like to talk about their main challenge or main challenges or opportunities in this context, we'd love to hear that too.
I agree with Sarah's 100%. What challenges she had were also our challenges. But one main challenge we had was paperwork. We have a lot of paperwork that needs to be filled out before a learner can be allowed to start our program. So we struggled with getting the paperwork out there. How do we get these paper copies to these students? And then how do we get the students to complete them and send them back to us? So we did a lot of snail mail, which didn't work out very well. And we had a tough time getting our students on. So what we ended up doing was creating all of our assessments in Google Forms. Our math assessment, our managed learning, computers, English, all of those assessments are now online. So when we get a student, we'll send them an initial email and it'll say, you need to fill out these. Here's the links you follow. It'll take them right there. They type in their answers and email it back to us. Now, it is a challenge if they don't know how to do that, but a lot of our learners are a little more advanced. They do know the computer, so it is a little bit easier for them to fill those paperwork out. But yeah, paperwork was the biggest challenge. If we couldn't fill out our paperwork, we can't put our students online and they can't start their upgrading with us. So we have 2 teachers who all they do is intake. They send out the paperwork, they make sure those students get what they need to get done, they send it back to us, and then they'll send them online. So we are able to reach a lot of people with the online paperwork, these students that are now too far away to come into our classroom, or that are shut-ins, or they have these challenges that they can't get through. They now can do their work online. They can do it in the early mornings, in the evenings, on weekends where we had such limited hours. It's open doors they can do it any time of day that they have access to a computer, which is huge for us, because now that we've gotten through that paperwork, these students can now access Brightspace at any time of any day. So that was a huge challenge for us. Once we got that paperwork process down, our students now have access at any time, and all they really have to do is come in to write those tests, get their courses done, and go from there. So it really has opened doors for a lot of our students, and I think they're thankful that we're able to do this online during the pandemic. So
thank you. So it sounds like the paperwork is a shared kind of a challenge, but once that's out of the way, it kind of unblocks like the other steps that can take place, and then the learners can benefit from the whole
Yes.
experience. So that's good to know. And it's interesting because it sounds like you had those 2 teachers and they were kind of dedicated to the paperwork. So even, I guess, in the challenge, in the pandemic, it seemed like different responsibility or different staff members have to take on almost like new
Yes.
responsibilities or new roles. So that's
Yes.
quite interesting from like an organizational point of view. So thank you for sharing that, Christine. And so I guess, yes, our third one group here with Alicia, Sandy, and Alicia as well. So 2 Alicias. I'll let you all take it away to address the second question.
And you're on mute. I think,
Go
do you
ahead,
want to
Alicia.
start? Yeah, okay. I'll start, and then Sandy, if you have something, please feel free to pitch in. So I think a few of our greatest challenges while having remote learning or collaboration in a remote environment. The first one was the learners were having difficulty in retaining the trained skills. As Sandy talked about it a little bit earlier, that we usually assess our learners' digital abilities and then we train them according to where they stand based on the assessment they do.
Alicia,
Although we do train them.
Alicia, hi.
Yes.
Sorry, it's one of the interpreters. You're talking a bit too fast for me. I'm sorry. I know you're pressed for time, but can you
Yes.
slow down? Yeah, sorry.
Sure. Yes, I took a time into my consideration, so I'll slow down. So what happens is when we evaluate them and we try to train them for their respective skills, sometimes they still have difficulty retaining those skills because all the digital tools, they're quite new to them and it might take them a little bit time to absorb them. So that was one of our challenges. In order to, our approach towards that was giving them some resources that they can hold on, right? Even if we are not with them. Sorry, I was reading a chat, so I lost my thought. But even if the instructors is not present in the moment with them, we give them resources like handouts or share some links with video tutorials with them so that they can keep reviewing those tools, so those exercises, and it helps them absorb the skills better. But as it is said, practice makes you perfect. So as they go on with their Zoom sessions, they slowly improve it and they slowly get a hang of it. So that was one of our challenges. The second challenge I would say was to keep them engaged, although we are using different collaboration tools, but not all the tools work for everyone. It depends upon the group. It depends upon the type of people we have. Again, their digital abilities. So in order to, our approach towards that is seeing what works the best in a certain group. Sometimes people love using Zoom chat, whereas others, they like to give you reactions. They like to share their screen in order for them to explain their point. So whatever feels comfortable based on the group level, that's where we go ahead with the collaboration tool. The third challenge is some of the learners do not have proper devices. They might not have a computer, they might not have a laptop, they don't have access to all those features. Some of them do not have a Google account. So it's not possible to use Google Docs in that case. And to cover that challenge, we just shift to another online tool. We just kind of have to go around it and find another tool that's more suitable for them, right? So instead of using Google Docs, we might be using Microsoft based upon if they have a Microsoft account. So those are 3 major challenges that we faced as collaborating on a remote environment. Sandy, if I missed something, please feel free to pitch in.
No, you're good. That was exactly some of the shared experiences that others have mentioned as well.
Awesome. Thank you. Yeah, thank you for sharing those and summarizing it so succinctly. I really appreciate that. And it's very insightful to hear about those challenges from your context as well. As a community program too. So I'll just move things along because I see that the time is ticking. So I'm really sorry again to be so timekeepish. I'll just post in the chat the order for the third question, which is basically like, I guess in a way it is related to the second one that we were talking about, the challenges. So it's really like the key takeaway from this experience. So Lambden Kent will go first, and then Learning Place will go second this time, and then Fleming third. So Christine, you can go for it.
Thank you. One key takeaway from this experience, I guess, was to never give up on the students. Our students were, I guess, blocked off from a lot of things during the pandemic, and for them to have someone consistently emailing them, calling them, texting them, it was a big help. I know a lot of them really liked that component of our, even though we're an instructor, we're still reaching out to them to make sure they're okay. Not just that they're okay with their learning, but that personally they're okay. So with everything going virtual, it's easy to lose track of your students and kind of what they're going through. When we were in the classroom, we had paperwork and background on each of our students that an instructor could come in and read and say, okay, this is where this student is at, and this is what I need to talk to them about. With being virtual, it's very hard to have that conversation with them and have every instructor know where they're at where each student is at. So it was really hard to try to reach out to students. And now each instructor is making a point each week to reach out to those students. If they hear something's going on, they'll do their best to reach out to them to make sure that they're doing okay. It's easy for me to get caught up in what I'm doing and how I'm doing during the pandemic. But it's another thing to reach out to your students to see how they are coping through this pandemic. A lot of them do not have the support system that I have or that you guys may have. And we want to make sure that we are available to be that support system through the Learning Center if they need it.
I appreciate that. And I think it builds on what I feel like from your first response, there's been this kind of emphasis about on taking care of the personal, like the learner, kind of the learner centered perspective. So that's, it's really interesting takeaway. So thank you for that.
You're welcome.
I'm just also receiving some, I think for you guys, like for Christine, for you, and for some of the previous presenters, so the learning group, there are some questions in the chat, and I'm wondering if maybe we could address them either maybe towards the end, like the kind of question Q&A part, or later in a follow-up email. But the question that some have had for you as programs is with remote learners who have limited time and skills access to digital communication devices. Do your learners control their learning time? Who and how is the access controlled? So maybe just give that a think. It's also in the chat, but maybe just kind of let that marinate, and then maybe we could address that at a later time, either live or through email. Also, there's a suggestion of moving the breakout rooms till after the break. So maybe we'll just go until, I think Monica, probably you're thinking till 3, and then we have the break, and then we'll do the breakout sessions at 3:15 instead of between now and 3, right?
Yes,
so
that way those who are planning to leave after discussion will have a chance to wrap up, do the
Right.
feedback, and then we will have a break. And those who will stay will have a chance to do a breakout room and kind of discuss a bit more some of the things we are sharing today.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. So that buys us 12 more minutes. So that will be, that would be good. Okay, thank you. So I'll let the learning place go, then Fleming. But yeah, I guess like we do have a little more time, so hopefully a little more breathing room. But if you could, still kind of succinctly package your responses, I think that would be great as well, just to keep time. And Tracy also sent in the chat a feedback form for those who do need to step out earlier. Then you can put in your feedback before stepping out if possible. We really appreciate that. Okay, sorry. Go ahead without further ado.
No problem. We had some similar experiences as Christine did with their learners, in that, because we're a community agency, we were already very learner centric. And I guess with the pandemic and remote learning kind of on the horizon, we had to become even more learner centric by addressing some of their barriers and challenges to learning at a broader scale. And so one of the learnings that we had was that, we managed to get in connection with a lot of other community agencies as an effort to provide our learners with some wraparound services that when they were in person, we didn't necessarily have to address. But with the additional challenges, with learning challenges, with mental health challenges, that was just something that we took upon ourselves to address more mindfully and more deliberately. So that was a takeaway for us, that we managed to connect with so many different agencies and grow our network around this. We also know that remote learning is here to stay. Our learners tell us, the demographic tells us, it's everywhere in the media. And, you know, we were kind of forced, like many other organizations, to embrace remote learning. And it really helped us from just advancing what our services are and being more diversified, which was inadvertently the best thing that happened to us. You know, if you want to have a silver lining that came out of the pandemic, you know, it really advanced us and helped us think innovatively, not just about the services we delivered, but how do we deliver them to a challenged demographic? And so we've learned quite a bit about our space. And yes, Alicia touched on this earlier, is that some of those collaboration tools that we've been sort of test running over the last little while, we're finding that they're not all helpful in all scenarios with all learners and all skill levels. And so the challenge is that we're trying to figure out ways that these pre-available, often free tools can be used effectively and ultimately help our learner and their learner journey or their educational journey.
Awesome. I really appreciate the silver lining that is being brought out. I feel like a lot of the programs who have spoken, so, you know, you guys at the Learning Place, but also previous programs have been bringing out the, I guess, the positive aspects of this challenge and how it's helped you as programs to innovate in whether it's like curriculum or looking at services, or like you were saying, serving really challenged demographics. So that's yeah, that's a very positive, I'd say, takeaway. So thanks so much for that. And then so I guess then I'll go ahead and pass the floor to Fleming. So Andrew and Sarah again. Please take it away.
Of course. Yeah, so again, we couldn't just choose one key takeaway. So I'm going to focus on 3, the magic number. So the first one just being that engagement can happen anywhere. We're no longer limited to physical spaces. Prior to the pandemic, for Fleming's upgrading program, we had 4 locations, you know, 1 in Cobourg, 1 in Peterborough, Lindsay, and Halliburton. So now we've kind of combined, you know, all 4 locations virtually, you know, for the sake of virtual learning. And as we return to in-person learning, that's also going to be kind of a hybrid model as well. The second takeaway, I think, is just being open to trying new things. You know, don't be afraid to try new technology out. You know, worst case scenario, it's, you know, it doesn't work. So again, just problem solve. We often tell our students, you know, to try new things, right? So I think we also need to, you know, take accountability for ourselves, have that growth mindset that, you know, you can learn new things and try different things. It's not always going to work, but you have to try them to see if they'll work, right? The third takeaway, again, just that we're now able to embed digital literacy and digital learning into our curriculum, which is huge, and just any type of student collaboration. And that's going to go ahead into all future deliveries. So again, just, you know, taking the positives from a really negative situation, I think is all we can do, right?
And if I could add, just to reflect on what Sandy and Christine have shared with us around putting the learner first. We have figured, I think we've also learned that we need to be the ones that jump through the hoops. They shouldn't be the ones that have to do that. I mean, quite frankly, they've had to do a lot already this year. But if we can get materials to them because they need it, or if we need to do a a driveway digital tutoring just to get them going on the laptop that they've borrowed from us, we'll do it. It's a lot easier, quite frankly, for some of us to do those things than to get them to have to come to us to access those supports. So like that's something else that I would take away from this, is that we see that as a way to improve how we do our service, provide our services to learners in the future.
That's great. Yeah, so realizing that there's, I guess, a larger capacity for the programs to shoulder some of that burden, if possible, and shift that away from the learners needing to carry that extra load, especially during these challenging times. But then, I guess that thought carrying forward, even once the pandemic will, I don't know if this is a state pandemic is over, or but I guess moving into kind of this this new approach or this new perspective on how learning and teaching can take place, and how that can be increasingly learner centric, like so many have been saying. So it includes that part of shouldering the burden. So that's great. Thank you so much for that. So this concludes the 3 questions that we had prepared for all the groups, all the guests. And I really want to thank all the guests that we have with us, and also the participants for the really insightful questions and resources being shared. That's really awesome. Love to see it. So now we'll take a break at 3. Just before transitioning to the break, I just want to share this. I think Tracy had posted in the chat this link to a quick feedback form. I can just share as well. So this is just a quick, I think it's a Google Forms survey, just to give us your quick insights or feedback on the session, but also how we could do things better, and your ideas for other sessions. So if you could fill that out, we would be very, very grateful. Just before transitioning to the second half, where we'll have break and then the breakout rooms, and then Monica will do the tech Q&A. So I think that's Is Monica, or Tracy, is there anything else that we should discuss before moving to the break?
Yes, Alicia, thank you so much. I just wanted to add that if you're planning to stay with us for the tech Q&A, you do not have to fill out the survey now. You can wait until the end. It's just occasionally those participants who have to leave and they don't have a chance to share with us their experience or their feedback. So that's why we are giving you access to this link a bit earlier. After the break, and I'm going to use classroom screen again, so we'll have a bit of break. After the break, we're going to do the breakout room. So those of you who are staying with us, we'll be very happy to have you stay and then do the breakout rooms, where you will have a chance to chat with each other a bit more about what was discussed today, what was shared, and also review your own observations. So stay tuned.
Thank you. Right. So I guess in terms of time, we'll take a break from 3 to 3:15. Is that still the plan, Monica? Or
let's do it that way. Yes.
Okay. And then I guess the breakout rooms will maybe be like 10-ish minutes. Like it will be kind of a short time, and then we'll bring everybody back to the main session to have the tech Q&A.
Perfect. Absolutely.
Okay, perfect. Okay. So I guess everybody can take the time to take a breather, get coffee, afternoon snack or whatever. And then we'll see you both, or we'll see you all at 3:15.
Yep. And then Alita, just to confirm, can you see the classroom management made easy page?
Yes, I can see your screen.
Perfect.
Yeah.
So if you participate in our sessions before, we use the classroom screen to set the timer, just to make it a bit easier for everyone. And that way you will be able to see the time and know when you need to come back. It's a great tool to use. So I'm just going to put the time on it. I'm going to put it at 12 minutes just in case. I know some of you will be coming back, but we will resume at around 3:15 for sure.
Okay. Sounds good. Perfect. Thank you. And going to take a quick break too.
Of course, yes.